The Last of Us, Part 2 is a deeply unpleasant game. You stab a dog, murder a pregnant woman, and discover an old porno made in homage to Crash Bandicoot. It's an overwhelming amount of awful to get your head around, despite its wildly ambitious narrative structure and some of the most affecting performances seen in a Vice scene that's seared into the minds of anyone who has seen it, especially that long, dread-filled descent down to the log cabin's basement. Had you played its work-in-progress version just a year out from release, your response might have been, "Is that it?" It was the end of 2019, just before Christmas, on my third and penultimate trip from London to Los Angeles, charting the story of the game's creation by developer Naughty Dog. No one outside of the studio had seen the scene yet, and with very good reason. Upon entering the room where Joel is soon to be killed, there is already an absurdly thick layer of blood caked on the walls and floor. There's no finished music, and the audio that is there isn't mixed, so the suspense is non-existent. The voiceover is patchy too, and it's not yet been bug-tested yet. It occasionally stutters and threatens to crash, the moment when Joel's murderer, Abby, shoots his leg off with a shotgun hitches for a second and the audio cuts out. I've seen games in development before, but not a moment this important. I was full of doubt. Would it land? Almost 4 years on, I needn't have worried. In the finished version, it is bloody, unflinching, and merciless. And you, the player, feel totally helpless. Part 2's big surprise will absolutely break fans when it airs in HBO's TV adaptation. After the COVID-19 outbreak in March 2020, Naughty Dog was rightfully concerned that The Last of Us Part 2's stark, post-apocalyptic setting wouldn't be something that players would want to immerse themselves in. Throughout the game's development, killing Joel was such a divisive move that several team members struggled to come to terms with it. There were people that got it, Druckmann told me during the reporting of the game's creation, and then there were people, a minority, that were just stuck on how violent it is, and how dark and quite cynical it is about mankind. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the game's fan base elicited more extreme reactions of the same base emotion, hurt. While Part 1 is grim and dark in many places, perhaps even more so than the TV show and its bittersweet Bill and Frank romance, it ultimately rests on hope and optimism as its core emotion. In stark contrast, Part 2 really twists the knife by making you sit and watch one of your favorite characters die only to then ask you to forgive the perpetrator by playing through their redemption arc for hours upon end. Although The Last of Us Part 2 would go on to win more than 320 Game of the Year awards following its release, it is still an undeniably contentious title. Much of the criticism levied at the game's story when it launched was that its central message, interpreted rather simplistically as "violence is bad," was too on the nose. So much of its marketing was hamstrung by the necessity to keep Joel's death a secret that a story told in vicious shades of gray was left open to misinterpretation. No one emerges from Part 2 unscathed, but one particularly brutal trailer was initially criticized for its violence against women. You're like, hold on, now you've just dismissed all the women that have worked on this trailer, including the co-writer that did the first draft of that scene, Druckmann said at the time.